Yo,
Oh, what's up, Techie? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, man. I caught a little bit of the React in the morning. I kind of saw like some of the initial opinions being formed, and I was like, you know what? I see what's going on right now, and this is actually really easy to talk about.
Okay,
It's gonna be really easy to kind of set the stage and clarify some of the stuff that's going on.
sure. So here's my. I want to let you know what I think's going on, because I'll
Hmm.
be real. I've been in this space for about 6, 7 years. I've seen this happen before, and this is why I really wanted to talk about this situation, because I think I know what's going on. I think I can explain this quite simply. So, you tell me when you think I'm misrepresenting what's happening.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for those. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. So what I think has happened, and other creators, if you're ever watching this, if you're reacting this later, make sure to follow my stream. But
Same.
feel free to correct me where I'm wrong. DM me, call me out publicly. I don't care. Here's what I think's happened. You're a new content creator. You've been doing this what, 6, 7 months?
Yep. Yep. Started May 22nd.
Okay. So you play this game called Wuthering Waves. Volume too loud? Okay, I'll lower it. You play this game called Wuthering Waves, and you like this game. You love this fucking game. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to make that very clear. There's nothing wrong with being passionate about your game. And you made a video called Kuro Deserves an Apology. And Mr. Pokey made a video called HSR Deserves Our Apology. And this was a provocative video meant to condescendingly and passive aggressively essentially call you a fucking retard and a Kuro bot. From that post, everyone in the community quickly started to call you. Now, once again, whether that video was made for fun or for damage, who knows? Is bro saying I started this shit? Mr. Pokey. Hold up. Mr. Pokey. The only reason why I am saying that you started this shit, okay, is because you said that you started this shit. So don't come in my chat and say that I'm saying that you started this. You said that you started this. Okay, and once again, that is the only reason why I'm saying that. Now let me continue. Okay? So Mr. Pokey makes a video, whether it was for fun or in bad faith, who knows? I'm not going to argue people's intentions. And this essentially got you labeled as a Kuro bot, Kuro shill, disingenuous liar who's glazing Wuthering Waves for a bag. Now, you are legally obligated to disclose whether or not you are being financially incentivized to play Wuthering Waves. For example, I am supposed to do a 2-hour stream every 6 weeks for Wuthering Waves. Okay? Legally, I have to say that. Now, I just want to ask you, are you legally obligated to make content for this game, Santodas? Or are you doing it of your own volition?
I was originally doing it of my own volition.
Yep.
And now I'm making content for things like creator contests, that sort of thing, where there's a cash prize or a
That
cash
doesn't
reward.
matter. That does not matter. Because that is not assured income. That is not underneath a contract. That is completely different. You are not legally obligated to do that. So, moving forward, you are not a shill. So, once you got labeled as a shill, once you got labeled as someone who's doing this for money, I believe I counted 11 other content creators started coming at you, shitting on you, memeing on you. Okay? From there, I wanted to essentially put out the fire by having a free-for-all brawl. I invite you on the Gacha cast, and you essentially get 3v1. I step in to try to clarify things every now and then and have somebody in your corner, as well as when Mr. Pokey was getting ganged up on, I was trying to be on his corner as well. And I think you did a pretty good job of defending yourself versus Fob, Genocide, and Mr. Pokey. Once again, not saying there was any wrongdoing with what they did whatsoever. And you were in defense mode, and I think you did a very good job of representing yourself. And what I would consider in an unfair scenario, I think you came out pretty close to being on top. From there, you got known as being the guy who 1v3'd and won. And then from there, I think you swapped from defense mode to being on attack mode, because now you have an audience that expects you to essentially be the grand survivor, the grand defender of Kuro, which is now leading you down what I perceive to be a slippery slope of a path that another content creator called Enviosity once went down. And I think you're in attack mode, and I think maybe sometimes you're taking a little bit too much offense to people going after Wuthering Waves for their opinions I haven't seen anybody state anything as objective fact, but now I think you're getting to the point where you're getting a little bit upset at just people's opinions on Wuthering Waves if you don't agree. Now, I want to know, is there anything that I just said that you don't agree with? I would love to know.
So I've been taking some notes of the entire conversation. I basically got 95 to 100% of everything that you're saying.
Yep.
I think that we were pretty much on the money until we got to kind of like that last point about the Grand. I think Grand Survivor is okay. I do think that Grand Defender label is where things start getting a little bit murky.
So once again, I want to say, so you don't think that your audience is expecting you to defend Wuthering Waves?
My audience is expecting that of me.
And that's all I want to say is that that's what I think your audience is expecting you to be.
That's correct.
Okay.
But what I will say to add on to that is that I think that the whole upset/opinion thing, the whole objective matter, that's where stuff starts getting a little bit murky.
Okay.
Because when we start getting into that situation, right, where we're saying that I'm shutting down opinions, that I'm basically going ahead and taking legitimate critiques or thoughts and then trying to invalidate them just for the sake of defending Wuthering Waves, I think that's where this whole situation starts falling apart.
Okay. So tell me your point of view.
Yeah, so my point of view, right, is obviously you started off the entire day with the whole React to Gacha Smack, right? And you had like a bit of a debate with the chat. You were like, oh, should we watch Saints vid or should we watch Gacha Smack's VOD?
Yep.
And I think what happened and what went out, right, was that you watched Gacha Smack's VOD.
Right.
Right. And so I think just from the initial framing of that situation, right, that's a bit, in my opinion, a bit of an imbalanced point of view. Because Gacha Smack uploaded a video that I'm reacting to. And then I react to it. And then Gacha Smack basically gets to, in a sense, like 2v1. Right? In his own video.
So I understand your perspective, but the only reason why I did that is because it represents your viewpoint in its totality. Because the video starts by Gacha Smack stating his opinion. And then it's your opinion of his opinion, and then it's his opinion of your opinion on his opinion, which I think actually is much more of a net negative because it does display your thoughts in its totality.
I think this is the kind of the problem with the situation. I viewed that my edited VOD, where I'm able to, like, I think there are several lines at the start of the video, right, where I say, editor, can you pull this stuff up? And that's where I'm able to provide context through the edited VOD, and I think it's just extremely clear, right, that I'm asking for the editor to bring it up in the first place, that there is additional context to the claims that I'm making or the kind of way that I'm presenting the situation. And so I think one of the first points that you made about, like, oh, everything that Saint is saying here is like a bit of like character assassination, that sort of thing, I get entirely where you're coming from, right? But when there is evidence that I am basically saying is going to be in the VOD and then, you know, it's not in there and then we're reacting to it, right? That, you know, like I didn't say that there was additional context. I think that's where a lot of the points that I could have been making at the start are just not as valid. That's when they start falling apart. And that's where Smack really goes in on it. He really, really goes in and starts making a very big emphasis on how I don't have any proof, I don't have any evidence, all that stuff, right? But I literally say in the VOD, ladies and gentlemen, editor, please pull up the stuff. And to me, him not basically recognizing that, right? And then we have the whole situation, right, where he's like saying, oh, this guy's just making like gigantic leaps. You know, like, I'm sorry for that. I just got a sub alert and it's very loud.
You're good.
And so the thing is, when that's the situation, right? And I don't know if you have my stream open right now. I've got some stuff going. This is the context that I'm talking about, where I'm just going to lay down the facts. I'm just going to lay down the whole scenario. And I'm going to lay down the point of view that I think myself, obviously, and a lot of other people in the Wuthering Waves community, just from taking a look at the interactions, right? How people are generally feeling about his takes. It's sort of like the majority opinion. At least that's my point of view. And that was something that I wanted to recognize and talk about.
Yeah, for me personally, I don't really give a fuck about what the majority opinion is. I only give a fuck what the corrective viewpoint is. So like, I'm not really worried what everybody's saying.
Fair.
Yeah. So I'll for example, and the reason why that's very important is because when I was dealing with Genshin Impact creators, I mean, I had to deal with that shit for 3 years, and then after 3 years, eventually they got that they were just being fucking dumb, and that's when I did the great 1v9. But yeah, so I think the reason why I'm really concerned about this is because, and this happened, once again, this did happen on both sides. I do think both of y'all were straw manning quite hard and arguing points that neither person were saying. I counted, you did this 7 times, Smack did this twice. But I think sometimes you have a habit of maybe not hearing the person out and kind of preemptively knowing what you're going to say rather than listening to what the other person is saying. And I think if you watch back the VOD, you'll see yourself do that because you're arguing points that Smack just didn't say.
So the thing is, I made sure that in the editing for the actual final VOD that I'm pushing out to the public, that I had the actual thoughts, more of the concise points, and more of like a logical flow of the conversation in the video that I'm making public. And I understand, you want to have like the best actual representation of your content on stream. But editing is there for a reason.
So I
And
want to
for me-
address one person in your chat real quick, which is Tectone
Yeah.
can't relate to this shit. He was friends with everyone except Saint. So I want to make this very clear. I like Saint quite a bit. I had his back for multiple other controversies where every other
True.
content creator was going
That
at
is
him,
true.
as well as for 3.5 years when I was in the Genshin Impact community. I did not have a single friend in the entire content creation space because they were all a bunch of retard pussies. So I can
Okay.
relate to this because I know where St. Tontas has been because I've been in this situation before. However, we're taking different approaches to this, which is why I'm trying to guide this through and try to make this a non-issue. Because I'll be real, St. Tontas, and I told you this yesterday offline. I think you're a great content creator. I want to help you out here. I want to let you know. I know, and maybe you don't know this or not. Maybe you do. I want to let you know it is totally fine to say, okay, maybe I fucked up a little bit. Okay, maybe I took an L there. And once again, I'm not saying that you're in denial. I just want you to hear this. It's okay as a content creator. If you admit that you're wrong every now and then, it's not going to ruin your career. It's really not. And if you have chatters who are going to harass you over saying, "Oh shit, yeah, my bad, I misspoke," fuck them. They suck. It's very important, and it'll actually garner a lot of respect with you and your community if you do say, "Okay, maybe I was misrepresenting him a little bit. Maybe I took an L here." Is what it is. Now, once again, I think that you've been on a colossal W streak lately. I think now, most recently, I think things are getting a little bit muddied. But that's all I want to say, and you can continue talking. But just want to let you know, like, I'm not here to fuck with you, man. I'm really not here to fuck with you.
That's what I was just about to follow up on, guys. Tech could have jumped on this call, and you guys saw what was going on in his chat, right? You guys saw like kind of like what the public perception was. He could have, without a doubt, come on this call and then basically like eviscerated me.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
He could have framed the situation in an entirely different way. And I think we just need to take a little bit of time to actually think about how he's approached this conversation, how he's set up, all of these points, right? He gave a shit ton of context. He gave a very accurate overview. And, there's a little bit, right, that, I had a little bit of like trouble with at the end, but that's what we're here to discuss. So I think he's having a very fair viewpoint of the situation, and he's giving me the opportunity to provide an explanation.
Yeah.
So I think to kind of like go into it, to kind of like set the context for the scenario, right? My viewpoint heading into that React, heading into like the sort of the main event of your stream today, was that Gacha Smack, from what I've seen over the past couple of days, starting with his devilishly diabolical tweet about the whole One Piece writers and the whole, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star, Wuthering Waves story. What I viewed just from seeing objective information about how long cutscenes in the games were, the 4 games, right? GI, HSR, WUWA, and ZZZ. WUWA in general, or WUWA objectively, ladies and gentlemen, had the most cutscenes out of all 4 of those gacha games.
Did it? I thought wasn't it the least ratio? Am I crazy? I thought I saw
literally the most cutscenes out of all 4 of the games.
Interesting. Okay, I don't remember that. Check, can somebody link me the graphic? Because I saw a graphic of that where it said WUWA. It might have had a higher. I can't remember.
It's in your Tectone's degens, and so while we're searching for it, it's in your degen. Somebody posted it. WUWA literally has the most.
Okay, let me pull it up.
So when I'm seeing that VOD by Gacha Smack, I have it on the screen, and he's talking and he's making these critiques about Wuthering Waves, never bundling ZZZ into the conversation, and talking about how Wuthering Waves is, kind of like in this bad storytelling, not really having cutscenes, not really giving it the fair shake that I thought it deserved, knowing that objectively it had the most cutscenes out of all the other gacha games. I was like, this to me seems a little bit misinformed. Why does it seem like, even though all the facts are proving him incorrect here, that he's making these claims? That Wuthering Waves has like this kind of like shitty storytelling that's become really apparent in games like HSR and Genshin. He also glosses over ZZZ completely and says that all the other games should strive to be like ZZZ, when by every metric he's using to compare the 2 games, or compare the 4 games, Wuthering Waves is objectively the best by the measures and metrics he's talking about. And so I viewed that. I saw it. I heard the react, and I was just like, this to me is just a little bit weird. Then I started going back into, the 1.3 VOD. I have a full recording of the 1.3 situation. Main story quest. And we just started taking a look at the dialogues themselves. And we were like, wow, these are some of the most cinematic cutscenes we've ever seen in like the gacha space.
Are you talking,
like,
are you talking about ZZZ or Wuthering Waves right now?
Wuthering Waves, the 1.3 Wuthering Waves story. You know, that time where like Shorekeeper, you just saved her, or you didn't save her. She sacrificed herself, and then she like evaporates into like digital mist.
Yeah, I remember. I love that story. It was great.
Beautiful cutscene, or beautiful dialogue. Not even a cutscene. The entire thing looks like a cutscene, but it's a built-in dialogue.
Sure.
And so I'm just pulling up all these different examples of honestly fantastic storytelling across the 1.3 and 1.4 story quests. And I'm kind of putting these adjacently next to these critiques that Gacha Smack is making. And all I can think is, wow, his takes are incredibly misinformed, or at the very worst, disingenuous. And so obviously I didn't leap that far into like the latter end, but I was just thinking, why is there so many critiques being made when it's very clear from like all of these different things that I'm seeing, all of this, you know, objective evidence from the duration of the cutscenes as well that we're pulling up? Why is he lumping in Wuwa under this category when quite somebody just gifted you a sub, and
great.
It's just like, why is he making all of these critiques about the game when quite literally the measures that he's making, or the measures that he's using to judge them, Wuwa comes out on top and ZZZ is actually like second place. And so the more accurate critique, in my opinion, is like Wuwa should be the one that the other 4 games are striving for, but he words it as ZZZ is the one that the other games should be striving for. But Wuwa, by what he's measuring, was better. And so I just viewed this take and I was like, huh, this seems a little bit misinformed. I'm not really sure what's going on. Why is he kind of you know, is he making these takes without full information, or, you know, without the due diligence, without doing the research? And then from there, right, basically painting the game as something that is flawed in this category when, by all measures, honestly, it's really not. And so maybe that's his opinion, right? Or maybe that's like a fact that he was trying to push when it came to like the storytelling. But when you actually see all the information, it's clear that that's not really the case. And he then followed up on like, is that kind of clear, the explanation that I have and why I thought that his take, and a lot of people, right, in response to his take, didn't really agree with him on lumping in Wuwa with Genshin Impact and HSR. Is that kind of clear, like why I think a lot of people disagreed with him?
It is clarifying your viewpoint on why you and many others disagreed with him. But I want to let you continue before I weigh in, unless you're all done.
Absolutely. There's a second point, and that's this is like the additional context that I'm talking about as I'm teeing up Gacha Smack's video. Because to me, it seemed like a consistent streak of him either downplaying stuff in the game, or in some ways, right, making claims or critiques based off of incomplete information or misunderstandings. He then has, as a follow-up to like his whole storytelling thing in Wuwa, buggering waves at its finest. Lamau, 2 of my double drops gave me a blank screen for the day, boys, right before going to bed. And when you look at that, when you look at this, right, the first impression is that bro's double drop echoes kind of just got deleted from the game. Yeah. That he didn't get them.
Yeah.
That's the first impression you get looking at this tweet. And let's be honest, guys, that's not a good look on the game. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, no, I do think Smack's initial tweet would have given people the opinion that the game malfunctioned.
Yeah, the game malfunctioned, kind of fucked him over, made him lose his resources, and wasted his time. That's what the first impression of the tweet is. And this is coming right after he just made some critiques that are objectively like wrong about the storytelling in Wuwa. And this is almost like the second strike. He then follows up with it, kind of like backtracking, being like, well, I never said I didn't get the rewards, but you never said you did. And when the first tweet looks like Kuro just kind of like robbed you of a double drop, and then we get like a backpedal like this, the thing has 22k views and 45 likes. And obviously, you know, ratios and stuff, blah, 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 like, you know, like the whole community thing. But a lot of people didn't like this. A lot of Wuwa players did not like this at all. And you can see there are a lot of members of your community, a lot of members of Tectone's DGens, right? They got blocked for telling him that his inventory was full. They got blocked. Like, he obliterated them from his Twitter feed because they told him this is not a bug. You said buggering waves. It's not a bug.
Okay. All right.
And so this is kind of like, we see the framing now, right? It seems like he is, in a sense, talking badly about the game from issues that are stemming from his own misunderstanding of what is going on. And my viewpoint on the whole Tower of Adversity video heading into it is that This is now the third thing that he's done in a 48-hour span of time, where he's now again making more critiques about the game. And the big thing about my critique was a lot of the things that he's saying, he's also not mentioning a lot of like mechanics. I think the big one was how the Tower of Adversity game mode doesn't fit the combat of Wuwa. And to me, I was just like, why are you not mentioning that Concerto is generated from dodges or parries? Why are we not mentioning how this time limit, when you interact with all the game's mechanics, you dodge at the right time, you parry at the right time, that's going to speed up your ability to rotate and do more damage and clear the game mode. And that lack of recognition or just like mention, and then we're just saying, well, Genshin is good, like Genshin's integration was good because it fit the game, but then to TOA, it just doesn't fit it at all. And then we're saying that like Shorekeeper feels clunky. To me, a lot of those takes just seemed like, again, like either misinformed or just not having enough experience, but we're going ahead and still making them anyways. And then the reasoning, I'm gonna be honest, Tech, when you look at the comment section of his original Why the Tower of Adversity Feels Mid in Wuthering Waves, his comment section is a wasteland. Every single person disagrees with, or not every single person, but this is his community, right? That's commenting on the video. Like, it gets pushed out to your audience first, and a lot of the comments that you're going to get are going to be people from your community. And a lot of people are disagreeing with it entirely. I think the most upvoted one is 223, and the first line is completely disagree with this one, Smack. And so when my viewpoint of the situation is that he has now made essentially 3 bad takes in a row based off of incomplete or misinformed opinions, and everybody in general in the public space is disagreeing with him, I'm like, why is he doing this? Like, what is going on for this kind of like 3 kill streak just unlocked a UAV for this to happen? Right? It's literally 3 in a row in 48 hours. And that to me is why I spent so long teeing it up, right? Because that was, I think, like the 4th or 5th hour of my stream. I had gone over all of the stuff, like the buggering ways. I got gone over the context of like the storytelling stuff. And I'm like, that's where the whole objectively wrong comes from. Because so much of it is, like, this is objectively not a bug. Wuwa objectively has the most cutscenes, but we're saying that it doesn't. And so it's just like, again, misinformed takes that he's using to critique the game. And then we're seeing it 3 times in a row in 48 hours. And I'm just like, wow, this is a bit stinky. Okay. And to me, I think when you look at when you look at the, my version of the critique, my stuff or my react that isn't interrupted by him with, I like the laughing is a little bit absurd, right? Like how much he's laughing in his VOD react.
Sure.
That to me is just like,
it's definitely an appeal to the vibes. I will say I have hung out with Smack multiple times in person. He is just a pretty giddy guy, but I can definitely see how
giggle Smack.
Giggle Smack. I can understand in a heated position seeing in this position your opponent laughing in your face would come off as disrespectful and provocative. I do want to interject here real quick. You've made 5 points that I want to refute here real quick, or at least expand upon, just so we can kind of stay on the same page. So I wrote these down. So you feel like Gacha Smack is wrong because the majority of the opinion was negative. I think that you should reevaluate that the public opinion equals the correct opinion. I think that can really lead you down a slippery slope. It can lead you to cultivating an echo chamber amongst your community. Me personally, I only believe what I believe and that I can back with logic. I don't give a fuck what anybody else is saying. I only give a fuck what I can prove. The other thing I want to talk about is Wuwa greater than every game cutscene. So I want to say I watched this at length. I talked to a lot of creators about this at length, about Gacha Smack's takes on the cutscenes. Now, I do believe that Zenless Zone Zero, and I don't really think there's any way to refute this. I think ZZZ has the best rigging of characters in any Gacha game, and that's bar none.
Wise, right? Like kind of like the bones, the mesh.
Yes,
all that
what the models can do.
Yeah,
what the facial expressions can do, what the movements can do. The models are just the most advanced. I did see the way that you showcased the Shorekeeper, quote unquote, dialogue option was far more dynamic than Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact. Me and you are on the exact same page where I think Wuthering Waves shatters Genshin and Honkai Star Rail. I made a list about this on Twitter where I rated every single game's ability to have a story and then their ability to tell that story. Because I do think there is a difference. I do think that Genshin Impact story is the best story. However, I think the way they tell that story is miserable. It's unable to be listened to. And I think Wuthering Waves, whether we want to admit it or not, I think the depth of Wuthering Waves' story isn't nearly as deep as its opposition. However, the way they tell it is far more dynamic. If you want to argue over points of whether ZZZ or Wuthering Waves is vastly greater, I think that would be a little bit disingenuous. I think that they're pretty damn close, Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero. Now, me personally, I do believe that Zenless Zone Zero is on top due to just the ability of the rigging of the models. Wuthering Waves cannot compete with those models. They are just far more rigged. Their bones can do a lot more. And because the game is on a much smaller scale, they can focus a lot more resources onto the cutscenes and the way they tell those stories as opposed to an open world game, which is a...
Could you say... Oh, sorry. Could you say that it's almost a more fair comparison when we're looking, I guess, at overall storytelling experience or maybe like, I guess, value for the time that you're putting in? I think that was a big argument that Smack drove. You have a limited amount of time in the day, and so you don't want to like feel like it's being wasted on shit like Penacony 2.6. If you're looking for like value in like the storytelling experience, it would be more like ZZZ/WuWa versus Genshin HSR. They're on the top end, and then Genshin HSR is on the lower end.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Obviously, HSR has some really big moments, but they take a really long time to get to, and that can leave a lot of players feel like their time isn't being valued. But I would agree for time spent for reward, people would enjoy Wuthering Waves more. But it really depends on what type of viewer you are. A lot of people like to bring up this anime. Have you ever seen Hunter x Hunter?
I have not, actually.
So Hunter x Hunter has this arc, kind of the Chimera Ant arc. And the Chimera Ant arc is one of the slowest, most drawn-out arcs in all of Hunter x Hunter. However, the moments that it builds to are a lot deeper and more impactful than other arcs like York New or Greed Island. Now, me personally, I'm a York New Greed Island type of guy. I like consistency, I like fast pacing, I like good moments. However, there are people who like more slow, more methodical based genres like Chimera Ant arc, to where this is just, it's to each their own. I agree that Honkai Star, I would say that Honkai Star Rail has the best moments of all gacha. However, getting to those moments is fucking miserable. It is fucking miserable sometimes, but people who are devoted will enjoy those. But yeah, I think you did cook Smack a little bit on that take. I do think Wuthering Waves is drastically undervalued. But I do think Smack's point was not to disparage all of these games. It was more, in my opinion, this is not, in bad faith, I could say, fuck Smack, he's being retarded. But in good faith, knowing the type of guy that Smack is, I think he was more so attempting to light a fire underneath the community. And the developers to increase their workflow, which, per Kuro Games' words exactly, they want that constructive criticism. They want people to be critical of that product, which is why I have no issue with what Smack said, because the net positive reaction of his video would be, make the game better, expect more from our developers, because we're paying them tens of millions of dollars. Just a quick little, our companies can do better. That's what I took of it. Now, that's obviously in good faith.
I can obviously, I can take that point of view, right? And it makes a ton of sense to me. And the thing is, when that was the one thing I was seeing from Smack, I didn't really like go into it too much initially, right? All I did was just take a look at, okay, he's making some very generalized takes about the game. And for me, obviously we went into like the whole crash course, right? About how WuWa's constantly getting shit on in the public. And you say it yourself at the stream, right? It's an objective fact of the matter. I actually took a look at Fob's tweet earlier this morning, right? He even calls out Gacha Gaming themselves, like the WuWa promotional video for the Game Awards.
You mean Hoyo Gaming?
Yeah, I called it Hoyo Gaming too, right?
Yep, Hoyo Gaming.
And it's like, the Genshin HSR, the Hoyo community is just larger, right?
Oh, yeah.
And for me,
it's like a 10-to-1.
It's a 10-to-1, right? And for me, it's just, man, like, can't we just get at least a little bit of recognition for what we're doing well, and when we're already doing it for ZZZ? Because Snack does a little bit of glazing for ZZZ, right? In his VOD, in his critiques, on the entire space. He does a good bit of glazing there. And for me, it's just when we kind of already universally agreed that WuWa is on a very competitive or similar level to ZZZ. You mentioned the stuff about the rigging being better in ZZZ. I definitely agree with that. It's just, if we're gonna recognize ZZZ here, like, why are we not recognizing Wuwa as well in this context? That was my point of view, right? And especially knowing that Wuwa is this game that is also getting constantly shit on. But we're not even giving it the laurels that, we're giving other games that have this sort of, that are getting this recognition in the critique. And for me, I viewed it as just like, okay, like, I kind of want to just take some time to clear the air on this take because I had this exact same viewpoint, right, that we just went over here. It's similar, or, it's competitive with ZZZ, and this is the one that Smack is elevating above these other two games. And so when we're in this public critique, right, this very viral thing that he has, we're lumping in Wuwa with Genshin and HSR. That to me is making it look worse than it is. And that to me was something where it's like, objectively, by these measures you're talking about, Smack, it is better than these two games, but we're not recognizing it. And so that's where I think the defense comes from. I think that was a critique on his end that didn't make a lot of sense, or that wasn't as fully fleshed out, or didn't have a lot of the evidence that maybe the other games that he was talking about had. Sure. And so for me, that's where the defense comes in. To me, that's an incomplete take that's misrepresenting what the actual state of the games are. And me defending that, in my opinion, is not like shutting down critique. I genuinely don't believe it is. My opinion on that is I am taking incomplete information or an incomplete take and giving the additional context, the evidence of why it isn't that way. And, sending it to my audience so they can see it. Majority of my audience are Wuwa viewers. And when you like your game, you don't like information about it being misrepresented in the public.
Sure, I think
and that
I
to
think,
us was always going on.
I do think the problem that's happening, and I'm telling you this because it is the truth. I know you have a big issue with misrepresentation of Wuthering Waves and how that's not right to do with the community, but you have to acknowledge that you did that same thing for Smack's Points, where you were misrepresenting the arguments that he was not making. And I think that's the problem, is that it all comes down to error in communication and error in understanding, because that is something that happened. And the other thing where it's saying, well, if you give ZZZ a compliment, you have to give Wuthering Waves a compliment, and that's probably not what you mean. But that is how people are going to take it, because perception is reality. It's like, all right, well, we both know that games are good, but on Twitter, you can say something like, I like pancakes, and someone is going to think, oh, so you hate waffles. That's not how it goes. Just because Smack was glazing ZZZ doesn't mean that, he doesn't like Wuthering Waves. I know Smack. He does like Wuthering Waves quite a bit. He's a huge fan of Wuthering Waves.
I guess the framing of those quote-unquote accusations, in a sense, I don't really think they're accusations, kind of like an explanation from my end of why there were so many things coming out, is that this to me was 3 hot takes in a row.
Of course.
Where there is either incomplete information, there's misrepresentation, right, of things that, buggering Waves. And when we're doing it 3 times in a row over 48 hours, I was just like, hey, is there something deeper here? And that's where the context of the video isn't there. The context isn't in the VOD, right? That's why I said, editor, bring this stuff up.
Now, I will say, let's talk about Ank's lack of glasses for the post where he called it buggering Waves.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, because we all know, Smack needed a pair of glasses because it did say sent to your inventory. But I will say, I think majority opinion would be, not that it matters, but I do think that UI that pops up that says it's sent to your inventory lasts for 2.6 seconds. I timed it. I do think a little bit more clarity of what's going on with your artifacts would be good. And I actually think the game would be improved if they said inventory full, you cannot redeem, because, well, then how the fuck are you supposed to know what you got? I do think Wuthering Waves can improve its UI because it should display what you got and not just say, figure it out. It's in your mail.
I totally get what you're saying. And I capped off my discussion on stream the other day by saying, guys, put this in the fucking feedback form.
Yeah.
If Kuro gets enough of them, they're going to fix it.
And
my viewpoint on why it wasn't, I guess, my viewpoint on why it isn't in the game or fixed yet is simply due to the fact that I don't think it's a very common issue for people. From the context of, it would require you to have 2,000 echoes just sitting in your inventory for that message to pop up in the first place. And to me, that's sort of just like, that would mean that you're kind of like not managing your resources, or you're not managing your echo merging. And so to me, it's like, I think a majority of, well, I'm just assuming because it wasn't fixed, a majority of players are actively managing their echoes. And so they don't run into this situation where they are overcapping and this UI situation can happen in the first place. My opinion is just that Kuro has quite literally fixed every single thing that has ever been, every single thing that's kind of like been publicly sort of like pushed forward, or they've promised to do it. And my opinion is just, hey, if they haven't fixed it yet, I just don't think they haven't got enough complaints about it. And so just send it on the feedback form, and they will likely fix it. They'll either increase the inventory limit, make it last longer, or just do something else with the collection of it.
Yeah, I just
that's
don't
my
think,
viewpoint on it.
Yeah, no, and once again, I think you're absolutely correct with what you just said. However, I don't think Smack ever expressed the opposition to that viewpoint. I think he just said, "Oh fuck, I didn't notice it." Made a buggering waves tweet, do a little bit of farming, is what it is. I don't think Smack has ever said that Kuro won't fix things. And in fact, he said the opposite, which is he loves that the Kuro games and Dong have fixed everything. Whereas when you go to Wuthering Waves, when you give them a constructive criticism, they say, "Oh, yeah, you got it, we'll fix it." Now, when you go to Dwayne and you give him constructive criticism,
he wipes
says,
with his booty cheeks.
He's crying, and he says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're bullying me." I think Gacha creators acknowledge how good Wuthering Waves is at player feedback, receiving constructive criticism, and fixing the game. That is what we all love. This is the game that the majority of creators agree respects their players the most. And
hopefully I don't believe at all that I made the claim that like Smack is saying that the devs don't make changes. That was like, it was a discussion with my chat. I see Liquid Cheese in here. I don't know if he's in your chat often.
No,
but yeah, this dude Liquid Cheese, he was fucking going in on it. He was like, like this is a bad UI bug. And I was just like, guys, like I just don't think it's something that happens very often to people.
Sure.
I genuinely just don't think it's something that happens. It was like not even a discussion at Smack on that point. It was just something that I like basically theory crafted with my chat, because we were on it for a while. I wasn't even talking about Gacha Smack at that point. I was just talking with my chat. I had Genozod in there saying he had like 1900 echoes. I was like, Genozod, how the fuck do you have 1900 echoes, right? And so that whole conversation like sort of happened. I was just like, oh God. Like, you know, like obviously when there's a creator in chat, right? I'll talk to the creator in chat, especially somebody like Genocide who I've interacted with before. And so that whole thing was like going on. I was just like, okay, I'm a little bit stun locked here, but I had like 3 people pulled up on the screen that were having some grievances with it. And so I was just like, all right, like maybe this is a deeper issue than I thought. I literally went into my game just to look at how many echoes that I had. I had like 984 and a shit ton of stuff that I could have dismantled. And I know Gacha Smack on his stream, he kind of like went into like me merging my echoes, and he was just like, wait bro, why are you he was basically making a big point about me merging my HP and defense 1 costs. He was like, what if there's a character in the future that needs the fusion defense 1 costs? And I was just like, are you just gonna hold all that shit in your inventory until like 3.0 when that shit releases? Like, why not just merge them now and just get stuff you can use? Like, I think that's just like the logical viewpoint of the situation. And it felt like Smack in that critique was just like looking for stuff to just pick apart. Because I'm gonna be honest, if you're holding like HP or defense, like Electro, Fusion, or like if you're holding HP or defense 1 cost for like the attribute sets, I'd be like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, you're actually just wasting space in your inventory for characters that don't exist yet. And it's like, yeah, I guess if your inventory clogs up because of that, you're fucked. But like, why would you do that when the characters aren't in the game? And so that was like the level of critique that I was seeing on the VOD and seeing in his React. And I was just like, I guess like this seems like a little bit, it seems like he's kind of just fishing for stuff at this point. And I can see like where maybe I was fishing a little bit. That's why I edited my VOD and uploaded it. That's why I didn't upload it entirely. I made sure that the claims that I was going to make and the critiques that I was going to make was just entirely related to his video. And I think that's why perhaps watching my video first of my react to like his stuff might have been the better way to go about it, because that's kind of like the refined approach. I don't think you put in, okay, you're like an expert at reacting right now. And the chances are, but most of the time, right, you don't put in everything that was going into that went into the VOD into the react, right?
So here's my take on that. Whether I reacted to your video or whether I reacted to Smack's reaction of your video of his reaction, there's always going to be it's always going to be an advantage, whether it's slight or huge to one side. So if I react to yours, then I would have cut out Smack's context.
Then it would have been in my favor. Favor.
And so, you know, I try to keep it pretty fair as possible and really laser in, because I'll be real, the issue isn't really about Wuthering Waves. It's more so about the communication between both parties. And the other big thing that we don't need to worry about that. The big thing that I want to talk about next is the other big point that he had an issue with, which was the Tower of Adversity, where Smack was saying that Tower of Adversity doesn't fit Wuthering Waves. It feels like a cheap copy or an enhanced copy of Spiral Abyss from Genshin Impact. Now, I'm not sure if you and Smack both know this, but the TOA also shared. Yeah, Pancage. Great. Okay, I'm glad you know.
Pancage. PGR Pancage.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I think, if you, this wasn't represented in the argument whatsoever, you like to talk about the dodging and the parrying, adding to the concerto energy, and how that makes you do more damage and it'll help player learn in order to deal more damage to hit those timers. But I think the way that Wuthering Waves would be even more greatly beneficial, and Smack didn't represent this at this point, where he said it doesn't fit Wuthering Waves, but he never provided an alternative on how it could fit, as I do think that TOA would be better fit if they to reduce the amount of HP the bosses have by about 40%. So the fights last about 2 to 2.5 minutes. And they were to increase the damage and the frequency of attacks, so that way you could dodge more to increase your concerto energy more and parry more, which is the basis of the combat for the game. And that would be an overall improvement for TOA, rather than just, let's just make everything have 1,000,000 HP like they do in Genshin Impact. But what's your opinion on that?
I guess just from my opinion, with like S0, S1 characters that are like pretty decently built, you are quite easily, or I would say more skilled players are able to clear the middle tower level 100 bosses in under a minute.
Right. So the problem is that you're saying more skilled players, but every game has to cater to its casuals, because that's the majority of the player base. And this is something that was a harsh reality. I'm not sure if you were aware of this. When Genshin Impact first came out, people thought that it was going to be a hardcore endgame mode, and everybody was building shit to go hardcore. But the reason why they never did that is because that panders to the hardcore sweats. That's less than 10% of these gacha communities. These are casual games. Gacha games are casual by nature, and these games will always pander to casual players. So,
Kuro
go ahead.
Has already done that though. I think I do recall there was like one video I made on Scar. Go
Scar nerfs.
Yeah, he got nerfed, right? He was attacking too frequently. He was causing too many problems for players. And I think one of the suggestions that you made was that the bosses should attack more but have less HP.
Yep.
But if Scar himself was literally nerfed for being too aggressive, right? That was the complaint that many players put on the feedback form, and he was nerfed in a week. I think to me, that's like evidence directly contrary to that idea, right? That idea of like lower HP but higher damage and more attacks, because players didn't like that when they did try that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, they overtuned it one time, right? They can still learn. I mean, they can't just try something hard one time. Doesn't, and you gotta understand, this is an example you can't name this example multiple times. You can name it one time with one issue.
They do have another boss though that attacks a bit like an asshole. I'm not sure if you've done the Tower of Adversity recently, Techie, but you know the fallacy of no return, right? I like to call them the fallacy of no rewards.
Okay.
Because that's like the giant robot that is the JoJo Stan robot, right? He has a second phase where if you do not use the game's mechanics properly with like the stagger bar, he actually becomes quite possibly the hardest boss in the game. That I think players can universally agree. The fallacy second phase is one of the most disgusting fights in the game, bar none. And that to me is almost like a skill mechanics check, where if you don't leverage intro skills, stagger bars, or maybe even yawn fucking woo, right? Vibration Man, you will get fucked.
Sure.
Completely.
So
you will get destroyed.
So the reason why I want to go ahead and talk more about how they already tried Scar and they fucked up and they had to nerf it, right? The reason why I think it's very important to not argue extremes and not let the extremes be the rule is due to the fact, well, if they didn't want harder content in the game, well, then why do they continue to add new holograms every single patch, right? So clearly they're okay with pushing towards, and those are rewards that are locked behind those fights. They are open to doing those fights. It's just, I think they fucked up one time and they can still work
and so they're
it.
A little bit, it's like the whole.
It's finding a balance.
It's a little bit like the Tartaglia thing, right?
Yeah.
Where his initial implementation in the Liu Wei story was kind of difficult, or I don't think it actually was, but they nerfed him into infinity and beyond afterwards, right? You go into the weekly boss right now for Tartaglia, I think if you like sneeze, his health bar disappears.
Oh, absolutely.
It's quite literally the fastest weekly boss in the game, obviously an over nerf. And I just think that when you have a time limited, like basically, if you are making this boss too hard, if you're making this content potentially too difficult, too aggressive, you are preventing somebody from getting asteroid. You are basically saying you don't get pulls if you don't do this. And to me, when somebody, or I think just in general, when it comes to gacha games, obviously this is my opinion, but I think it's like a public perception too. When you are kind of like locked off from either like a skill issue or like a mechanics issue on the tower, and you know, basically those asteroid rewards, that's a big like game quit angle. Where you suddenly feel like now you're not getting as many rewards when you like don't do events in games for like the premium currency. That's like when you start quitting the game, because now it feels like you're losing, and then like the snowball of loss just keeps going and going, and then you feel less value in just playing the game overall.
So when do you think players feel more in despair? This is going to be a subjective take. I just want to know your opinion on this.
My opinion.
No, hold on.
Players...
Let me finish. So the thing is, you know, and I'm going to give a full opinion here. So people say, let's say, for example, the first Elden Ring boss, I believe, is Godfrey or Godric, right? And somebody puts you to go fight Godfrey, and then they decide the next boss from Software, they give you Millennia, Blade of Mikola. And then say, well, we tried to give the players harder bosses, but it was too hard and they quit. Well, there's a nice ground in between Godfrey and Millennia, Blade of Mikola, where they can, you know, kind of nerf it a little bit, right? Yeah, Margit. Thank you, chat. Thank you. Margit and Millennia. So the thing is that we have to figure out, when do players feel the most despair? And Chet, I want you to weigh in, because obviously you're the players. Would you feel more despair fighting a fight for 10 minutes and not having enough damage to beat it? Or would you feel more despair fighting a boss for 30 seconds and it killing your ass because you couldn't get a dodge right? You gotta figure out which reality that you want to live in. Now, me personally, I get soul crushed when I do a fight and I'm like, oh God, I just don't have the damage for it. Oh God, I have to go pull a fucking light cone. Now, if I had to be like, oh, I gotta dodge better. That's the reality that I like to live in. Now, I don't want to make it fucking ridiculous, right? But that's the balance that Kuro Games has to really figure out what the players want.
It's a bit like fast and fun versus like long and rewarding in a sense for the fight.
Yes.
Okay. So my viewpoint on that is there's a lot of nuances with that sort of comparison in my eyes. Because when you do get to the point, I guess I'm thinking about this from the very well invested angle. There are some players, Techie, where they'll run compositions in the Tower of Adversity in its present state and clear it in under 30 seconds.
Wait, how much are they spending?
They are S0, S1 characters.
Is that with the light cone?
That's with the weapon.
Ooh.
But they are clearing it in 30 seconds.
Yeah, but that's expensive though. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
that is expensive.
When it's guaranteed, you know, and the pity's lower, you know.
Yeah, guys, just spend. It's guaranteed. You got to understand that's still a lot of money, and those players are really good, and they are because this isn't a commonality. This is once again saying, well, there are players that can do this in this time, but hey, man, I'll be real. If I were to go get my imaginary girlfriend to play on my phone, I think she would misclick about 8 times and get fucking nothing. And it sucks because there are probably people who can do that, but I don't think they're the majority by any means. And the moment a game starts catering to the minority is when a game dies.
I agree, right? And the thing is, I don't think that your approach of having like lower health and doing bosses doing more damage or being more aggressive, right, is necessarily a bad one. I'm just thinking about it from the perspective in that in the current state of like the enemy balancing and the current state of the enemy design, there are, I guess, to me, I'm just thinking about the edge case scenario. I'm just thinking about the scenario of where as a player continually invests more and more and continues building up their skill in the game, kind of like the only way, at least at this point, right, to show that measure of progress is clearing faster. Is, getting your rotations down, maximizing your concerto, and then just clearing faster. Because once you reach that 2-minute mindset, once you reach that 2-minute time limit, right, and then you're able to get the 3 stars, it's sort of just like, well, not really much you can really do here to get any more rewards. But it's also very simple, right? Even with uninvested characters, to get to that 2-minute time in the tower, even on the middle one.
So I want to address what just happened and call to your chatter, right? So there's this guy in your chat, Liquid Cheese. You mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, he's a little boosted sometimes.
Right, and I quite literally said exactly what he said but he's saying in opposition, even though what he said is exactly what I said.
Oh, we
said
go
the
around in
hardcore-
circles all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
like that is someone who has zero listening comprehension whatsoever, and those people are very dangerous to have because when someone is that aggressively fucking stupid, it just causes a lot of issues, right? And that's
Isn't
what.
he in your chat too?
No, he's been banned in my chat.
Oh,
I
man,
actually
buddy.
just unbanned him because he was complaining about being banned in my chat.
How long were you banned? Or how long was he banned for at this point?
I have no idea, but it said he was banned. I was banned 2 years ago. There it is. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some troubles with him recently.
Yep.
He was actually one of the big reasons why I was stun locked. You're still dented, brother, man. What do you mean, little dented back then? It's still nothing has changed in 2 years.
Yeah.
He was one of the big reasons why I was stuck on the whole debacle with like with the UI thing. UI guy It's actually so ironic that we're on
I
the
also
UI
put up his
situation.
ban logs. The reason why he got banned is because he posted a giant penis in my chat. So.
Why am I not surprised?
Yep. Just give me the old
Why am I not
context.
surprised at all?
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it was assy, bro. Like, oh my. Yeah, hey. The only reason why you're not banned in my chat, Liquid, is because you have the gifted sub banner or the gifted sub thing.
Yep.
So be careful, man. Maybe I'll lose my patience soon.
Yeah, but
you're
I
really
think,
wearing it thin.
I think we talked a lot about what's going on, why you feel the way you feel, and to hopefully make people understand your viewpoint and why people are saying that you're quote unquote crashing out so much. But I just want to say, I know you probably feel that you're being antagonized by the community, and to a certain extent you are. But I think you'd also agree that maybe you're being a little bit too aggressive towards people, and I understand why you're doing that because you have a chip on your shoulder, right? There's this game that you love that you think everybody's shitting on, but it really is what it is. Just and maybe there's other things you want to say. I think I'm good because I understand it. We had a good conversation. We went through all the points that I wanted to talk about, but if somebody else doesn't like the fucking game, who cares? As long as you just let these people know, oh, Smack doesn't like this game. Okay, watch me play it. If you do, hey, be my viewer. It's that easy. Who cares?
Yeah, it's just my viewpoint on the situation is, if we're kind of getting into critiques of like why we don't like the game, and if I'm looking at the critiques and I'm getting the opinion that like, hey, a lot of these critiques seem to be formed from a misinformed understanding or an incomplete understanding, I view that as an opportunity with my content, right? To kind of dive into it, break it down a little bit, and then see why exactly it is that way. Where the misinformed stuff is coming from, provide that additional context, right? And then get into, okay, maybe like this whole negative viewpoint that we're having or these negative critiques, they aren't actually as negative as they're appearing right now. Because I think that's just something, right? Especially when you have like a bit more of like a public creator or a public voice that in a lot of ways has been representing the game, kind of pushing for the game, and is now, critiquing the game. And the critiques that they're making don't seem to be as valid as they could be or as complete. I think that is a little bit of like a situation, right? Where you have somebody who was previously pushing for the game. And that's why I actually wanted to make the video, because Gacha Smack has been a big pusher for Wuthering Waves, right? He has been talking about how it should win Mobile Game of the Year, how it should have like more, like how it should be getting recognition in these ways. And so to hear that side from him, where he's making critiques that don't seem like they're as informed as they could be, I think that that's an opportunity, right, to kind of dive into that and just say like, hey, Smack, like maybe we could have a little bit more information here. Maybe we could do like a little bit more research, have a little bit more due diligence, right, before it's making these claims. And that's kind of like the viewpoint, or that's the viewpoint that I have, and that's the approach that I should have had, or that's the approach that I had getting into his content. And, without the context, I think, that VOD doesn't look that great because I had provided that context throughout the previous 5 hours of the stream. And so, yeah, I had been covering all of that stuff that was maybe in the 5th or 6th hour of my stream at that point.
Yeah, so what you just said is not how you came across at all. The way you came across was, you're objectively wrong. Wuthering Waves is the greatest game of all time. You're retarded. That's the way that you came. And you also said, and just so you know, you did say this, that you're allowed to put out misinformation and other people aren't. You did say
Okay,
that, which I think you don't mean.
That is a horrifyingly out of context clip.
Okay,
all right?
correct the context then. Correct the context.
Okay, so oh boy, we're getting into part 2, and I know a lot of people,
Yep.
a lot of content creators weren't happy with me about this take. They were not happy with me about this take. I think you remember that conversation I had with Mr. Pokey?
Which one?
Where, well, we were talking about guide makers. We were talking about like a certain level of skill, blah, 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 coming into the game, a certain level of understanding of the mechanics to basically make a guide, to provide like information to the community.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was a bit of like the situation that led to that conversation, right? Where we have creators that are getting early access to these characters, early access to these mechanics, and are essentially, right, being the first movers in the community to provide information.
Absolutely.
And my viewpoint was, when these creators have much more time, much more preparation, and much more opportunities to provide complete information, I think that them not providing that on their release has a bit more of a negative connotation than somebody who is attempting to compete with creators that have the early access. You know, you understand how the YouTube algorithm works. You know how guide making works, right? There are a lot of reasons why some HSR and Genshin Impact creators aren't making guides anymore. Because when you don't have that advantage, you don't have the first mover advantage, you're rushing to get out your content as soon as possible, then you have a bit of a situation on your hands where you're trying to get out all of this stuff as fast as you can. And if you don't, you're kind of going to get swallowed in the algorithm.
Sure.
And your content is not going to get the views that it needs.
So once again, I totally get what you're saying. I am firmly against the creator access, early access server. I think it's absolute cringe. I think it's bullshit. I've been on record saying that shit is lame as fuck. Mm-hmm. However, your argument is that if you don't push out slop, then you're going to get fucked with the algorithm. However, if you push out guides that do have misinformation in them, you're also going to get fucked. The only solution is to do your due diligence. You will be at a disadvantage, but if you put out a consistent guide, you will eventually, like Macho Man Randy Savage says, the cream will rise to the top. I think it's only a matter of time before Wuthering Waves acknowledges you and gives you the same bullshit advantage that everybody else has. But I do think it is still irresponsible to say, well, these other guys have it easier, so I'm allowed to put out misinformation. I just don't think. That's.
I wouldn't call it necessarily. I think the word misinformation here is also a bit on the nose. Okay. I would rather say incomplete information that I actually had later corrected later on and made a follow-up video.
Okay.
To provide that information. I think Gacha Smack and I were actually some of the only creators that did that. Gacha Smack, I, and Maggie were some of the only creators that did that.
Sure. So okay. So. Let's. I want to know, why do you think that incomplete information is fine, but misinformation is bad?
I'm not saying that it's fine. I'm saying that the framing should be, instead of misinformation, incomplete information.
So let's say, for example, you're like driving on a road, and it said, you know when you're like driving, and you got the GPS on, and you're cruising down the road. And it says, right turn ahead, right? And then it says 200 feet ago. It's incomplete information, but it's also not wrong, but it's also incredibly just like, you don't want to push out bad information. You don't want to push out incomplete information just because.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, that's like, it would be like one app, right? Which I don't know, is like engineered by like, what was one app that was engineered in like 5 hours, and then the other app had a week to be built, right? But they're both giving out the same information.
Well,
you kind of get what I'm saying?
No, I get, but they're not putting out the same information because one gave out misinformation or incomplete information.
Yeah, but I'm saying kind of all the Camellia guides, at least on release, had incomplete information. And the framing that I used was just like, hey, one side had more time than the other. I've actually already said that both is not that great.
I'm going to give an extreme example. Back in the 1800s, everybody had slaves. That doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you know, just because everybody's fucking up doesn't make it all right that you fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, it's not great.
Yeah.
And it's bad, right? Like, it wasn't a great that all of the Camellia guides that were on release did not have the complete information.
Yeah, I do also want to, you know, I know as a guy who makes guides, a guy who does put out like, good publicity for Wuthering Waves, you might be worried that like, oh, dude, if I make one misinformation, one lack of information, my career's over. I promise you, your audience, if you just say, hey guys, fucked up on this guide video, I will update it, check the pinned comment. Sorry about that. Was on a time crunch. Won't happen again. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Your chat really won't care that much.
Yeah, and that's why I made a follow-up on it, so
Great.
that I could dig deeper into it and break down, where I didn't do enough research, where I didn't basically put in all of the rotations and all of the different mechanics that I could. I made a follow-up to it and uploaded it.
Yep.
So to me, it's just like,
Great.
I basically admitted that, like, hey, we didn't recognize the full potential of this character. A lot of us in the community didn't do that, myself included. And here is my attempt to clear the air and provide more of this information.
Yeah, and I think that is great that you did that.
I guess your chat is the ones that are, or your chat is the one that's being a little bit boosted right now. We got people over here saying that like, he never apologized, just apologize. Look, I made a video to correct it. I think that's a bit more than just saying my bad. I made a fucking video to correct it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I never really hold someone's chat accountable. I will bring up certain examples just because it's fun. But, I mean, obviously when you have a group of like 6,000 people, someone's going to say something silly.
Yeah. Nah, I mean, it's just, I got like 1/4 of it up, and it's seems like, I thought I saw a lot more than expected. But maybe I got one guide.
Sure.
Maybe I got 2 guides, 3, 4.
Yeah, by the way, I want to let you know, Sarah the Abyss is not your chatter. That's my chatter. So I just want to make
Sarah
sure.
of the Abyss is everybody's chatter.
Well, but they're
just...
majorly mine. I just want to let you know. Like, they're in my chat every day, and we talk offline every day. So I just want to let you know that.
Okay, well, we're not quite there yet, but they've been in my chat every single day at this point too, Techie. It's not that deep, bro.
Hey, I'm just letting you know. I just don't want you to get hurt again when you see them, gassing up another streamer, right? You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
I've never experienced Sarah, gassing up another streamer over me. So I just want to make sure you don't experience that heartbreak again, okay?
Sarah is the fence queen, if we're frankly being honest.
Because you did crash out on Sarah pretty hard, like you did.
Okay.
Like you did.
That was.
Yeah.
Can we not at least point out the irony of Gacha Smack saying he crashed out, but then kind of like literally freaking out as they're saying it? I was just like, yo, Sarah, what are you doing in their chat? And then he's like, he crashed out. He crashed out. Yeah. I was just like, okay, like what's like, isn't that the most ironic thing we've ever seen?
Who knows, man? Regardless, let's just I mean, I think at the end of the day we can all agree this situation really ain't that deep. At the end of the day, we're just playing mobile games, and I think you and Smack are both still great, and I think there are some people who are taking this shit far too seriously, and I just want to let you know, because this is very important to me that you know this. Your career is fine. Your community is fine. This will not be a negative detriment to you whatsoever. And if you do, upon reflecting this, think that you did maybe misrepresent somebody here, do something wrong there, apologizing does not harm you whatsoever. Admitting that you're wrong does not harm you whatsoever. And to be honest, I think it would do a lot of good if maybe you said, maybe I misrepresented Gacha Smack a little bit, and maybe he misrepresented you. But I don't want you to think if I apologize, he has to apologize, because then it's disingenuous. But you don't have to do anything. But I just want to let you know, you are okay. I understand how frustrating the situation is. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe talk and address and give your point of view of this, because I did react to Gacha Smack's POV, so I wanted to get your POV, which is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and I think this was a very fair conversation. I was able to get out all of my points, right? Provide the context that I wanted. And, I think kind of like to address your last point, right, about the apologies.
Oh, and final thing, I would say everything that I just said to Saint, I have already said to Gacha Smack. So let's just relax with that, okay? I'm trying to be very fair here, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think they're potentially, right, just doing like a reflection on my stuff, I think there is definitely the potential that there was wrongdoing on both sides to a degree. I kind of got Gacha Smack's tweet open over here where he says, I'm just gobbling that Kuro knob and turning my esophagus into a generating concerto with my esophagus. whatever that means.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not gonna lie, bro. That shit's hilarious, though.
It's it's a little bit goofy, but so is also me asking him to change his handle to Giggle Smack.
Yeah,
I think that's
Giggle
pretty funny,
Smack.
too.
Yeah, no,
Giggle Smack,
I
right?
thought Giggle Smack was also funny. I love when people shit talk each other. I'll be real. I think it's so funny. But yeah, this shit's for laughs. This shit's for goofs for me. But I'm glad you're doing okay. I have just noticed, St. Jonas, when you go live on stream lately, there's you're going a little aggro. Just let you know, you're all good. Everything's good. I know you probably think you're in a war, but you're good.
For some people have been getting upset at my reactions to content, like when I'm able to, look at certain videos, look at certain guides, whatever, and point out some of the flaws or like point out where there's like, just stuff that's just objectively wrong and like not correct. Guys, there's a reason why I'm able to react for so long. It's because there's a lot of content that's fucked up. And if there's not if the content stops getting fucked up, then I have nothing to react to anymore.
That's very true. Just remember, I want you to try to incorporate, you have objectively. Now I want you to add subjectively and demonstrably to your...
Demonstrably, gotcha.
Demonstrably is great. So when you use demonstrably, I'm going to give you an example. This point that he said is demonstrably untrue. And what that means that you can demonstrate how it's untrue because you have a receipt.
I do that a lot. I do that a lot, brother, man. That's why my reacts are so long.
Like, so for example,
shit in game.
when you go about Gacha Smack's opinion, you can't say his opinion is objectively wrong. You can say it's subjectively wrong because it's his opinion. But yeah. Anyways, I'm going to get out of here and play some games, but I really appreciate you talking, man.
Yeah, appreciate it too, Tech. Thanks for the discussion.
Absolutely.
And yeah, enjoy PoE 2, I guess.
All right, cool. Peace, brother. Great.